Never fear of missing out by clicking that subscribe button and becoming another member of the Babylonian family. I'm feeling particularly lucky! Ha! Jinx! No, but seriously, this is a Demolisher variant, double gun, and we're going to have a look into why the Lucky Jinx is such a good legendary for Technomancers, maybe especially because of its tier 3 mod. But first, Babylon is now partnered with Raffled Up, the one-stop shop to have the chance at scoring yourself some great tech at a low price. Raffled Up has made over 1,800 people happy with their competitions, ranging from store credit, GPUs, VR sets, and even full-on PC rigs to take your game into the next level. Keep your eye out for mega bundle competitions too for your chance to win several £1,000s worth of gear, all for less than the cost of a chippy. If you fancy your chances, make sure to use our partner code in the description below and save yourself some money while also supporting us as a channel. Best of luck and enjoy the content. Fortunately for you, you only get a skip for around about 10 seconds at the start of each episode, so don't worry, I will not be duplicating my voice anytime soon in this video, and I'm not really planning on doing it again for another video. Hi, my name is Songs of Rays, welcome back Babylonians to another legendary guide, and today, as we mentioned in the skit, we are looking at the Lucky Jinx double gun that comes in its Demolisher variant. Now, what makes this a legendary? Well, the aesthetics of it are definitely one of the better ones that we've seen so far in the legendary guides, but also it comes with the tier 3 mod of Ultimate Toxic Bullet. Now, shots will inflict toxic on enemies, and this refreshes every single second. It's literally as simple as that, and when it comes to a Technomancer, especially for a backup weapon, that mod becomes extremely valuable, especially if you're running a firepower blighted rounds kind of build where you constantly refresh your magazine. With this mod on any kind of backup weapon, you should theoretically be able to never run out of bullets, and that's obviously if you ever do run out of your blighted rounds as well, because obviously if you're doing it correctly, you should never run out of those as well. So what makes this a good gun? Well, this is a double gun. It does have a decent rate of fire. It has a massive clip size of 80. It also has a 796 rounds per minute, which is not the fastest we've seen, but it's definitely up there. The damage does suffer a little bit because of this, because I've got an 88.4k firepower one, which obviously is nearer the top end scale, and this only does 2,579 damage per bullet, so it is a bit low, but I think that's obviously why the clip size makes up for it. The reload is quite slow at 2.7 seconds, which is why I've said it's quite important to be able to keep your bullets topped up, and with that clip size of 80, and if you go top tree, pushes it to 120, you should theoretically never have to reload this gun, unless obviously you've got a really low leveled one and you're trying to take on too high of an expedition or some endgame content. The crit multiplier is only 139%, so I wouldn't recommend using Embalmer's Rage on this, but it's still obviously better than some of the other things that we've looked at out there. Now, the accuracy and the stability do suffer a little bit because these are 65 and 64% respectively, but the range at being 80 meters is huge. The fact that you'll never really ever see damage drop off for this gun unless you're trying to push the range out on this, you should be absolutely fine. Don't worry about that. Now, the other 3 rolls it comes with are crit damage, skills life leech, and long range damage. Now, all 3 of those are really good for a Technomancer because obviously the crit damage is great. Long range damage, which is what your Technomancer specializes into, is great, and the skills life leech also pairs nice into the blighted rounds so that you can constantly keep yourself topped up, and that really works nicely with the passive that the Technomancer actually comes with, where they heal from doing damage in general. Now, I wanted to try a little bit different. I did think the damage was a bit low, so I didn't really want to show off Dark Sacrifice or Killing Spree anymore. Especially seeing as 75% of that of a lower number means it's never really going to reach those heights. So I thought, you know what, let's double down on the fact that this can inflict toxic. So I then went with Burst of Decay, where critical shots cause explosions that inflict toxic on enemies within a 5-meter radius. I want to get toxic out there as much as possible. Now, if I'm using this if this is my main gun that I'm using blighted rounds on, this would be pointless. There is literally no reason to ever use blighted rounds on this gun for the fact that blighted rounds inflicts toxic every single time it hits an enemy, so why would you then want a mod that has a short cooldown to be able to also inflict toxic? It's a bit pointless. So I'd recommend this as a nice backup gun to be able to keep yourself topped up, just in case you need to keep yourself alive and deal some damage out while you wait for your blighted rounds to be able to come back for whatever reason, whether it is a case if you just ran out, you just weren't managing it properly, or there's some kind of connectivity issue, and obviously that can also affect it as well. Now, as you can see from the gameplay that's been in the background, you can see that this kind of does hold its own, and the fact that this then ties into all the skills that a Technomancer can go into for the extra increased damage to Toxic, it really kind of melds nicely with the fact that you don't need blighted rounds on this. It has its own version in some kind of way. Now obviously it doesn't get the bonus like initial damage and anomaly power and all that kind of thing that the blighted rounds offer. But as soon as you then inflict toxic, every single follow-up round that's on that enemy will then deal extra damage if you've got it all paired up right. If you've got the 15% and the 25% increased extra damage, you should be able to melt through a fair few enemies with this. And like I said, as a backup weapon, that's great because as soon as you run out, you then rely on your blighted turret to be able to inflict toxic usually, and that's not very reliable and has a very short range. So to have it as a gun is great, and the tier 3 mod really does help out with that. Now, would you say it's better than the Burst of Decay, which can obviously inflict toxic within a radius and has the exact same cooldown, but only works on critical shots, or do you just go for the standard, just every single shot inflicts toxic? Now, that I suppose that's more of a personal preference. I like the idea of area of effect toxic, but obviously there are some cases on certain levels where getting critical shots isn't necessarily possible. Especially the kind of like animal kind of levels as well, like Colosseum for example. Most of the enemies, like the bigger ones, you know exactly where to aim for, like the ribcage for the Broodmother, and the face for the big boy that just comes charging along with you. His name kind of eludes me at the moment. But when it comes to the other enemies, their crit spots aren't quite obvious, and you kind of have to rely a little bit on luck to be able to inflict that. So there's arguments for and against for both of them, so I'd say you can't necessarily go wrong. The fact that the cooldown is so short means you wouldn't necessarily miss having the area of effect. Sometimes it may be better just to be able to focus on one target at a time, and just use the ultimate toxic bullets over Burst of Decay and just have that more consistent kind of feeling. Now, is the Lucky Jinx good for any other class that's out there? And I'll be honest with you, I don't really feel like it is. I mean, it's nice to have the tier 3 mod to be able to do it, but in the same way that tier 3 Bleed is great for Devastators, tier 3 Burn is great for Pyromancers, I feel like the tier 3 Toxic is just basically good for Technomancers, and then that's it. So I would only ever use this for that kind of class. It would be great to obviously add it to your library of mods if you actually need it, but essentially stay away from the gun if you're any other class apart from Technomancer, because you just won't be able to use it to the fullest of your ability really. Obviously, if it's one of the few legendaries that you do find on your way to endgame, and this is obviously one of the higher level weapons that you've got, then by all means equip this. You'll never really go wrong in that kind of aspect. The little bit of damage that Toxic inflicts is kind of negligible, but the gun itself is solid enough to be able to use and actually run that along with the rest of your build. So toxic damage on top of it doesn't really hurt your build, but in most cases it doesn't necessarily help either. Because that's the simplicity of the mod and that's the simplicity of the gun. That pretty much wraps up what the Lucky Jinx can offer to you. Like I said, to summarize, too long didn't read, didn't listen, whatever. It's a great gun as a backup for a Technomancer, but when it comes to any other kind of build out there, any other kind of class, it's just not worth it, and in my opinion. There may be some kind of funky ways to be able to use this in some kind of status power kind of build, to be able to inflict as many different elements as possible onto an enemy and try and bleed them out that way, but without that, it's kind of okay. Like I said, it's just kind of middle of the pack, because that's just what a tier 3 mod of this caliber just really brings to the table. So I hope you've enjoyed, I hope you've learned something useful, I hope you've loved the gameplay that's in the background, showing off what it can actually do for you. Hopefully it kind of relates to you as well, so if you can enjoy it, if you can find some way to be able to put that into your build, then more power to you. As always, drop us a like, drop us a subscribe if you've enjoyed the content. There'll be a few more guides to go. We're almost at the end of the legendary guides, so only a few, like a small handful to go, and then we're going to be focusing on like builds. We're going to be focusing on other ways to be able to enjoy the levels, like breakdowns and analyses of the levels that are in expeditions, all that kind of good stuff. So you don't want to miss any kind of videos that are going to be coming up anytime soon for the channel, and things are only going to get better from here. As always, I hope you've enjoyed. Keep yourself safe, keep yourself well, and I shall see you on that next video.